How quickly we forget the God who lives in every day. How easy to lose sight that you reside in the mundane. How quickly we forget the power that's running through our veins, the kind of power that empties grave. And oh my soul, remember who you're talking to. The only one who death bows to. That's the God who walks with you. And oh my soul, you know that if he did it then, he can do it all again. His power can still raise the dead. Don't tell me that he's finished yet. Lest we not forget the voice that's holding back the waves, was once the voice that told the skies to pour them into place. Let us join the endless song of everlasting praise, the only God who empties graves. Oh my soul, remember who you're talking to. The only one who death bows to. That's the God who walks with you. And oh my soul, you know that if he did it then, that he could do it all again. His power can still raise the dead. Don't tell me that he's finished yet. If you broke through the oceans, you can break through these plains. If your word made the mountains, you can move them all the same. If death fell before you and it's still on its face, and the power that raised you is about to move again. If you broke through the oceans, you can break through these chains. If your word made the mountains, you can move them all the same. If death fell before you and it's still on its face, and the power that raised you is about to move again, is about to move again. Oh my soul, remember who you're talking to. The only one who death bows to. That's the God who walks with you. And oh my soul, you know that if he did it then, and he could do it all again. His power can still raise the dead. Don't tell me that he's finished yet. He's not finished yet. And oh my soul, his power can still raise the dead. Don't tell me that he's finished yet.
Well, good evening. Good evening, everybody. I'm sorry for the delay in the ultimate irony of Murphy's Law. At our parent guardian tech night, our technology gave us a problem, so we'll just kind of see where that ends up for us. But we're really excited for you to be here tonight. We have three parent workshops this fall on Wednesday nights. So this is the one we're kicking off with. We have Katey McPherson with us, and Katey came in from Phoenix today. Can we just put her? You don't even know if she's going to be any good, but could you put your hands together and say? Yeah. In November, Katey will be back and we'll be talking about Childhood 2.0 and how we can interact around that as families. But our goal throughout all of these workshops is to encourage us with hope. I think as parents, we all feel the weight of the world on our shoulders. We don't want you to leave tonight with a little extra weight on your shoulders. We're hoping you leave with some tools, with some conversation, with some hope, with some community. So Katey's got a lot to bring to us. She's worked in legislation, worked in education, she's worked in parent resourcing. She recently was in Treasure Valley working with the Love and Transformation Institute and did some work down in CUNA, so we're really excited to have her tonight. A few things you should know, so some housekeeping things. Our bathrooms are out those doors, down this hallway, so just go this direction, that's where you'll find our bathrooms. Over here, any questions you have during the night, you can snap this QR code with your phone camera, take you to your web browser, and you can put questions in there, or you can just go to slido.com and put that code in. So if you have during the night, if you're just like, okay, I want to talk to Katey about this, or this is what I need resources for, you can pull your phone out, you can do that and grab those, and then we're going to end our night with a few minutes of Q&A pulling from some of those questions, okay? So we won't have live Q&A. We'll have Q&A driven by questions through here. All right, so with that, bathrooms are that way. This is the way you can interact through the night. Katey's going to present. We're going to end with some Q&A, and then we'll get you out of here into your evening. So one more time then, would you welcome our presenter, Katey McPherson?
Hello, hello. It's so nice to be here. It's cooler here than it is in Phoenix, believe it or not. As Carlos said, I'm Katey McPherson. Just a little bit about me. I have 4 teenage daughters. They are currently 13, 15, and 16. Next week, they will be 14, 15, and 16. So I'm in this with you, trying to figure all of this out. We have a lot of fun together, but every day, before 7 a.m., someone's crying, and after 7 p.m., someone's crying. So in the trenches with you, we just love our girls. And so I spent 22 years as a school teacher. I moved into guidance counseling, and then I ended my first year of my career as a school administrator. To be super candid, I left public education in 2016 because I was so frustrated with what was going on with our kids and technology and what was coming across my desk and how kids were interacting with each other that I felt a larger call to leave and do this work. So for the last 6 years, I've been on the road, alone, together. I co-facilitate with law enforcement and social workers and psychiatrists and pediatricians and just try to spread the good word. So tonight, I won't lie, I am going to present some things to you that are sort of heavy in nature, but as I told Carlos, I will leave you with some hope. And the reason that I'm going to present the heavy is this is what's going on with our kids. Like, our kids are being exposed to things that we need to be aware of. And so I will offer many, many strategies to stay ahead of that. So I function during the day, so to speak, and at night as the Director of Professional Development for a company called Bark. I work on the school side of the house. On the family side of the house, we are an artificial intelligence app that monitors and surveils and supervises all social media platforms, email, text messages, and then on the school side of the house, we sit on the students' Gmail or Microsoft Office 365 account. So what that looks like on a daily basis is we are alerting schools, and then on the family side, parents, we're sending thousands of alerts out about things like cyberbullying, predation, sexting, drugs and alcohol, depression, anxiety, self-harm, etc. So anything that you would be worried about your student, you can use Bark and sync it to your device to receive those alerts. And so with AI, we are able to alert in real time. Super proud that we are able to intervene and, excuse me, not only save lives, but also alert you as to what you can do to help. So you would get an alert. Underneath the alert, there's a snippet of the conversation that your child's having. Perhaps it's another student sending your child something that is either concerning or a safety issue, or it's a stranger or older classmate saying something that's inappropriate. So on the family side of the house, you can subscribe to Bark for Families. I work on the school side of the house. We are absolutely free for schools, and so we believe that school safety is number one. So that's what I do during the day, and then I do these wonderful things at night. If you're looking for me, I have my own personal kateymcpherson.com website. So everything you hear tonight, you will receive. So I will send my slides to Carlos. He can get those out to you via email. If you hear something tonight and you are concerned about your child, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I actually know a lot of people in Boise, well connected in many spaces, and will find help and resources that you need. This is what Bark looks like. So this would be an example of the snippet of the conversation, the time that it happened, et cetera. So I'll show you that again at the end of the presentation, but just to give you sort of a feel for what it looks like. One of the things that I'm going to do is I'm actually coming back in November to show the movie Childhood 2.0. So tonight, I'm going to show you just the trailer of it, and then we can talk about it if you want, or we can wait until November. But I do think it is a conversation that needs to be had. So I'm going to show you the trailer now.
A long time ago, families were in communities. They were local, they were small.
I was born in the very depths of the Great Depression. I was put to work, carrying wood, carrying water. I knew how to shell peas. I knew how to break beans. We still didn't have electricity.
I have 2 Instagram accounts.
I use Instagram,
Snapchat, and TikTok.
TikTok and Fortnite.
I can just scroll for hours on end. 11 hours a day.
It's been 8, 9.
Maybe like 12.
It's actually been a way that we can keep track of them out there in the real world where things really are scary.
The lives of kids were sort of changing slowly for a while. And then all of a sudden, those kids were able to get on social media, and that's when everything skyrocketed.
The rates at which they're experiencing problems continues to increase.
We also know that the teen suicide rate increased 56%.
Last year alone, we received over 18 million reports of international and domestic online child sexual abuse.
We have traded a false sense of safety and security for actually putting our kids in riskier situations.
I call it the race to the bottom of the brainstem. So it starts with techniques like pull to refresh.
Pretty much every guy has like an addiction to it, but no one talks about it.
But it's just faster now, and it's younger.
Well, yeah, like nudes of girls go around the school all the time.
At the beginning of the year, there were multiple suicides before school even started.
There were men that wanted to talk to children at all hours of the day and night.
Please be shy.
On Snapchat, one thought it'd be a funny idea to talk the other one into committing suicide, and she did it. She's dead.
After about 6 weeks, we were able to crack his phone.
Kids right now are going to experience the worst of what we're going through.
I will never.
It's the first time.
Do you think your parents know that this happens?
No. My kid won't do that. My kid would never. My kid's school isn't like that. You're wrong.
Because what they see, they feel neurologically compelled to do.
Right now, we're effectively living in an experiment. How is this going to affect us? We'll find out.
So the name of the movie is Childhood 2.0. I do screenings at schools. I do screenings in people's living rooms. I do screenings on Zoom, and I Zoom into a community. It's a fantastic documentary. It was made in 2020. We at Bark are a part of it. We didn't produce it, but a lot of our executive leadership is actually in the film. I highly, highly, highly encourage you to watch it. So we're going to be showing it here on November 16th. If you'd like to get a sneak peek, it is free on YouTube. Just go to YouTube and Google Childhood 2.0. I would watch it alone first. If you have children that are 13 and up, and after watching it yourself, you feel like this is a great conversation starter, which I believe it is, I would watch it with your children. So we're hoping that you join us on the 16th for the discussion that will follow. I know we're going to have a social worker here, somebody in psychology, Officer Gomez perhaps. I typically screen the movie and then have a panel of experts to answer questions because the documentary is heavy duty, but it is what's going on with our kids. And the best thing about the documentary is it's children, age 8 to 18, talking about how hard it is to be a kid these days with a device. And so whenever kids talk, I listen. So again, Childhood 2.0, childhood2movie.com if you're looking for a facilitator's guide, any sort of discussion questions. If you're in education or in ministry, you can find that there as well. Moving on, today I'm going to talk about 5 protective factors. And protective factors are things that in communities protect children. That is a place like this, the people here, you yourselves, the ministry here, anybody that protects children is considered a protective factor. So that can be a human resource. It can also be obviously educational resources, curriculum, etc. So the first protective factor that I want to talk about is how to be a trusted adult. As I have teenagers, what I hear from them is no one is listening to us. And so I think when we think about how to be a trusted adult, we need to start talking to our kids about that. So I want to make this as interactive as possible tonight. So I am going to give you some time to discuss with each other. My first question for you is, what do kids say is a trusted adult? I think we can probably define it. We probably think that we do an amazing job, and most days we do. But I want you to think about if you were to ask your kids or any kids that you work with, what would the kids say? So I'm going to give you 2 minutes to do that, and then I'll bring you back. So people around you, if you have to move a little bit, that's okay. I'll give you a couple of minutes. What do kids say is a trusted adult? Oh, good to know. Oh, it's okay. Yeah, no, thank you so much. I'll stay in the brackets. No, I'm good. Yeah. Okay, ideas about what do kids say is a trusted adult. Do we have any courageous volunteers? What would your kids say is a trusted adult? Pardon? A teacher, okay. Somebody in uniform, okay. Coaches, okay. Someone who listens. Yes. Someone who they think is not going to get mad at them. So listening without judgment, perspective taking, right? So this will pop up again. I think as we go through tonight, tonight's about raising resilient kids. And so one of the things that we want our children to be doing is problem solving on their own. So I'm going to show you some statistics that are probably going to be a little bit startling on paper, but I also want to outline why this generation is also so amazing and what we can do to support them through that resiliency, being trusted adults as well. So protective factor number 2 is destigmatizing and removing barriers to help seeking. So one thing that has happened over the last 10 years, and especially over the last 3 years, is this generation has seen famous people, influencers, celebrities step forward and say, I'm not okay. I'm not okay with my mental health. I'm going to bow out of the Olympics. I'm going to bow out of this because I mentally cannot get through this. And so for the last 40, 50 years, we've been telling people, if you're not okay, go get help, go get help, go get help. So this generation is listening, and they have all sorts of resources. They have TikTok, they have Instagram, they have all sorts of media that is telling them that it's okay to go seek help. What they don't have currently is enough adults that are resourced enough to say, when they come to them for help, like, I can help you and I know what to do. So being a trusted adult, that means we can start with being good listeners. We can start with validation. So you don't have to be a trained clinician to be a trusted adult. You don't have to be a trained clinician to be a help finder. What we can do is, first of all, thank them for coming to us and believe them. What I hear often when I work with small focus groups, student assemblies, is I've told my parents, but they don't believe me. Or I've told my parents and they say things like, in a year, this won't matter. I had a breakup too, and in 1994, I got over it, and you're going to too. And it then becomes about the adult instead of about me. And so I think we do those things obviously with good intention, but what this generation continues to prove is they do need some help, and their anxiety and their stress levels are completely off the charts, and our family's stress and anxiety levels are off the charts. So I'm going to show you some statistics that are hard to look at, but I want to point out that as these students have felt more comfortable coming forward, they're expecting that you have the resources that they need. And so we have treated for anxiety or overwhelming anxiety. So you'll notice that this is 2010 and 2018. So this was pre-pandemic. So we won't know the exact kind of causal correlational data of the pandemic for probably another 5 years, maybe 10 years. We certainly have some theories, we have some guesses, there's some research, but everybody would like to blame everything on the pandemic and everything on the smartphone. And that is not necessarily true. So in 2010, 2018, this is the American College Health Association study. So college sophomores were surveyed across the United States. And you can see that we are in a public health crisis of youth mental health. I would argue we're also sort of in an adult mental health crisis as well. And so as students come forward, schools are scrambling to get as many resources as possible. And so we're training our teachers, we're training our students. I know in Utah and in Idaho, you have Hope Squads, which is an excellent program where it's peer-to-peer mentoring. Students are being trained to take care of other students. And that's actually where they want to get the help from first. They would much rather go to a peer first than come to an adult and feel like they're not getting what they need. And so, as students, your student, if you work with kids, are coming to you, I need you to know that this is evidence-based research. This is actually happening. And if it's happening in your family, it's going to be okay. And we do have the resources. We just need to build the bridge to get them there. And so this church is a protective factor. It is a bridge. It is a resource. So the fact that you're here tonight is the first step in just being steeped in knowledge of what to do next. And so one thing that I'd like you to discuss next with the people around you is in pre-kindergarten, in kindergarten, we tell kids, if you see smoke, if you see fire, what do we tell them? I'll ask you, what do we tell them? Run. What else do we tell them? Call 911. What else? Tell an adult. So they're in the classroom and they see fire. They're going to stop, drop, and roll, right? So this generation needs to figure out, with our help, how to stop, drop, and roll out of their emotional pain. They're having a really hard time coping and a really hard time figuring out some kind of low-level things, like when I'm mad, when I'm sad, when I'm frustrated. These are some strategies that I can do. So I'd like to talk about your own emotional blueprint tonight. Like, what are the things that you as a family, or you as a couple, or you as a person do when you're stressed, when you're anxious, when you're afraid, when you're frustrated? What are your 2 or 3 go-to strategies that you use, that you have an emotional blueprint? So I'd like you just to share those with each other, and then we'll come back and share out if you're courageous enough to do so. Okay, for time's sake, I'm going to bring you back. So, what are some healthy things that we do, things that we do when we are angry, sad, mad, frustrated, that we can model for our kiddos? Exercise, awesome. Listen to music, yep. What else? Pardon? Alone time, yes. Imagine. I had a mom last night, I spoke in Phoenix, and she was like, I don't have that. Where would I put that? I have a 2, 4, and 6-year-old. You gotta find it. We gotta carve out at least 20, 30 minutes for you. Other things, alone time, exercise, music. Pardon? Prayer, yeah, prayer. Awesome. Going for a walk. So bodies in motion, especially if you are raising anybody between the ages of 7.5 and 20. Bodies in motion, when they're upset, you're going to get a lot more information out of them if you're walking with them shoulder to shoulder, or in the car shoulder to shoulder, or if they're in the back seat, or if the lights are out. So I'm going to teach you some brain research tonight about why we shouldn't sit across from each other when your child is in trouble with you. Because brain research shows that we kind of actually overwhelm the brain with our words. And so when bodies are in motion, the verbal emotive centers open up. So when I work with schools, I talk to kids about emotional blueprints, and a lot of them go to their phones. They go to video games. They say, I play video games. I go on Instagram. So the danger in that, and for some of us, we do that as adults as well, is that numbing, that escape, then is feeding some of these students algorithms that are obviously not healthy. So when I roll into a school and I'm doing faculty training, I often say to a principal or a superintendent, how is the well-being of your student body? And they say, so many kids have A's and we're doing this blue ribbon thing. And I'm like, no. I want to know about the well-being of your student body. Because a lot of these kids can rock a 4.2, but they don't know how to sort of tie their shoe. They're having a hard time with life skills. They're having a hard time with emotions. And so when I look at a community, when I look at a church, when I look at a school, we have 3 lanes of wellness. We have well-being, we have distress, and then we have crisis. So I outlined in the slides before, unfortunately, we have too many students slipping into crisis. We also have too many students that are sitting in the lane of distress. So I want your child to go from well-being to a little bit of distress, because that stretches the coping, that stretches the resilience, but I want them to bounce back into well-being. And so as you watch your kids have stresses, have bullying, have breakups, have failures, I failed my math test, somebody pushed me off the swing, whatever those typical things are, we're looking for every single day and night. Who's in well-being? Who's in distress? Is anybody moving or tracking towards crisis? So unfortunately, the kind of movement between distress and crisis is very, very quick. The national statistic for a student of any age to move from distress into crisis is about 15 minutes to 2 weeks. So once a student gets to the point where they're, ideating about, I don't want to be here anymore, or they're self-harming, they're starting to make a major slide. So my goal for you would be tonight and every night to kind of track them like this, like who's in well-being, who's stressed out, how are we going to move her or him back into well-being. So what are some signs that students of any age are in distress? What are some things that maybe you've seen from your own kids or kids that you've worked with? How do we know when a kid is moving into distress? What are some warning signs? Grades are slipping, yep. So grades are big time. Other things. Isolating. Other signs that kids aren't doing well. Acting out. So kind of a fast fact. So I have 5 sisters, I have 4 daughters, I have no brothers, I have no sons. But 95% of my work in that 22 years on a school campus was with boys. A lot of boys in my office, a lot of boys doing goofy things. When boys are depressed and when men are depressed, it's often seen as rageful and angry and not weepy and crying. With our girls, that's a little bit different, but often when I've worked with families that are in crisis or have unfortunately lost their student to suicide, when they track back, they talk a lot about, I didn't realize that when he was being so irritable and such a jerk, that was actually depression. So that's something to just be mindful of as you go through this. And it's tricky because especially between the age of 8 and 18, when puberty is kicking in, a lot of behavior that we say is, quote, a warning sign is also just being a very typical teenager. I'd also be looking for things like they've played soccer for 6 years and this year they don't want to play soccer. They ride their bike every day after school. You've started to see they're not riding their bike. Grades are slipping, hygiene slipping, sleeping more. Off-the-cuff comments like, I don't want to be here anymore, or you guys would be way better off without me. Social media, if they are of the age and they have social media, everything you want to know about your child, if they're 8, if they're 12, if they're 17, is on their device. You have to be supervising and monitoring. That's going to give you behavioral insight into how they're doing. So again, I want them to have a little bit of yuck. And we as parents do this great job of like swooping in and intervening and making sure nobody failed their test and we're going to get a tutor and we're all these things. And that's great. But what the research continues to show is we are actually dampening resiliency and coping by swooping in and fixing everything. So I'm going to talk about that in the framework of bullying in a few seconds. So again, my goal after tonight is that you start thinking about how does my kid stop, drop, and roll? Does my child have 2 or 3 strategies that when they're frustrated, whether they're 5 or they're 10 or they're 21, like what are their go-to strategies? Because what we're seeing is they don't know what to do. We're seeing boys drift to pornography. We're seeing boys drift to video games. We're seeing both genders drift to substances. And so we don't want those things to happen. We want the strategies to be really healthy. I go for a run. I listen to loud music. I take a drive. I call my best friend. I call my super cool uncle. Like whatever that is for your family, start outlining that and make that like maybe a family night where you sit down, like everybody's going to do their emotional blueprint because kids really need us to be there for them. Some characteristics about, this generation that I think this generation, like I'm on a lot of planes and in a lot of Ubers. And so often when people ask me like, oh, where are you going? What are you doing? And I say, oh, I talk on the topic of youth and youth mental health and social media. And they're like, oh, this generation, they're burning their brains out. They're going to amount to nothing. Like they're so negative. And what I want you to know is there are so many different things going on for them. And what's not listed on this slide is these mass shootings, these things that are going on weekly, in the news that are impacting their anxiety levels, and just how they feel about being safe in the world. And so, excuse me, as an educator, about 20 years ago, the College Board came down and said, everybody needs to take the ACT, everybody needs to take the SAT if you want to go out of state. Everything's bullying. So after Columbine and after 9/11, we all freaked out and decided that like there are really mean kids and then there are really nice kids. And what I'm here to tell you after supervising literally 65,000 kids is most kids are pretty cool and pretty nice. And yes, they can be mean, they can be rude, they can be annoying, but that's just part of being a kid. When I look back at my career, I can name 2 children out of 65,000 that I would say are truly deviant. The rest of them did some mean things, did some goofy things, did some explicit things, but most kids, meanwhile, they're just trying to figure it out, and they need our support. So not everything is bullying. And when we started engineering our playgrounds and deciding that games like tag and flag football were too dangerous, our boys started to suffer. And we have continued to see that across the lifespan. And so I'm a huge advocate, even though I don't have any, for our boys. And so just looking at like, what do schools look like? What do communities look like? This kind of trend after 99, 2001. Dr. Brown, Brene Brown, kind of names it as we're parenting with a thin veil of terror on our hearts. And after this summer, I would agree that maybe we should be, but the reality is when you look at crime statistics in most communities, violent crime is down. In most communities that I go to, a child has never been abducted by a stranger. But when I talk to students at assemblies and I ask, how many of you have been told you can't go outside or you can't go down to the park because you might be kidnapped? Almost every hand goes up. And so we wonder why our kids are so anxious, but then we do this really weird thing where we hand them an iPhone 13 XR for Christmas and we're like, happy birthday, Merry Christmas. Like, it's so crazy the things that we say to them that are not maybe true. And so at the school level, the framework has become there's a victim and there's a bully. And if somebody kicks you under the 4th grade table, go tell your teacher. If somebody shoves you in the 8th grade locker room, go tell the assistant principal. Somebody calls you a bad name, go tell the principal. So all these kids now are like, Mom, what do I do? Dad, what do I do? Teacher, what do I do? And the locus of control has become the adult. And so coping and resilience is really, really low because they don't know how to look at another kid and say, don't call me that name. Why didn't I get to sit with you at the lunch table yesterday? Like, what happened between us? Like, they don't have the vocabulary to have those conversations. And so what I'd encourage you to think about doing is when they come to you, not if, when they come to you and say, this is what happened today at school, and they're crying or they're upset, asking them, like, how do you think you should solve that problem? What are some of the things that come out of our mouths automatically when our students come to us and tell us, you know, somebody pushed me off the swing, she called me a name, she wouldn't let me sit with her at the lunch table? What are some things, if we're really honest, that come out of our mouth? What did you do? What did you do? So now, like, she's telling you a story about her, about this person, but now it's like, you must have done something to make this person mean, right? So we're sort of re-victimizing our victim there. Other things that we say to them. With good intention. We're great parents. Did you tell your teacher, right? So again, the agency of the child has then come to the teacher. I can tell you in the 22 years I was on a campus, I never once got a training on bullying. Never once. We talked about the bullying policy, but I was never trained in what to do about bullying. I literally just made it up. I went on my own to some workshops. I read a lot of books. But most teachers and most principals have not been trained in what we call bullying prevention. And I'd like to take the word bullying and like throw it away, by the way, because it's not always bullying. There are some things to that. So locus of control adult, kind of pushing back on our victim. Anybody ever said anything like, well, you just need to ignore them and find some new friends? Yeah. So the problem with that is that kid is in their class, and so they can't ignore that person. And so sure, ignoring somebody for a day might work, but if this person is a true aggressor, they're coming back for your kid. And so we need to teach our kids the vocabulary of what to do when someone challenges their dignity. And so I'd like to talk about, again, some things that we're doing that we can kind of help them with. Prior to age 2, we've taken 2,000 photos of our kids. So how many of you have a child between 10 and 18 that has their own device? Okay, a lot of you. So I get a lot of calls like, why is my 12-year-old daughter taking 75 duck face selfies? And I have 13-year-old twins that take a lot of duck face selfies. Because every move our kids make, we are documenting. We are recording everywhere they go, everything they do. We take a photo or a video. And if Katey doesn't smile properly, we have to take like 17 more until he smiles, right? And so the takeaway message for this generation of kids is life is to be documented and not lived in real life. And so that's not a shaming on parents, but what I would love for you to think about is when you're at these events, can we take 1 or 2 photos and then really live in the moment? Because what's happening with our kids as they age 7, 8, 9, 10 is they think they need to do that too. And so once they get their own device, they're going around the world like this, and they're missing out on so much fun and so much real stuff and this face-to-face communication that we've sort of lost the art of. And so one of the words that I've adopted about 12 years ago, I went to a workshop, is dignity. And so I'd like to just have you define 2 words with each other, and then I'll bring you back. I'd love for you to go home tonight and talk to your kids, not tonight maybe, but tomorrow, about the word dignity. And it's a word that, you know, I've heard in church. It's a word that I might have heard somewhere else, but not very often. And it's not spoken about in our schools. And I think it could truly change the tide of student behavior if they knew that they had dignity. So I'd like you to define 2 words. One is dignity, and one is respect. And so when I roll into schools, there's usually like banners like citizenship and compassion. Respect is like all over the school. And when I ask the kids, like, what does it mean? They sort of roll their eyes. They are so over it. And this generation is completely over the word respect. And I will explain why when we come back. So 2 definitions, dignity and respect. So I'll bring you back in a couple minutes.
All of my heart, you have all of my heart. Take my life, it is yours. All I am for your cause. Though I stumble and fall, you will carry me home. I'm always in your sight, Jesus, shepherd of mine. All of my heart, you have all of my heart. Take my life, it is yours. All I am for your cause. Though I stumble and fall, you will carry me home. I'm always in your sight, Jesus, shepherd.
Okay, so sometimes people Google dignity, which is fine if you did that. It's a hard word to describe. Any guesses? No wrong answers. The inherent worth of a person. Spot on. The inherent worth of a person. Yes. So I don't know if our kids know that they have inherent worth. I think through prayer, through what we do in our families, they have the feeling of, but I'm not sure they've ever heard the word dignity. And so I'd love for you to think about adding it to your vocabulary, adding it to theirs, and so that they know that everywhere they go, that they have inherent worth. So most children that go to school, whether it's charter, private, public, whatever it is, have their dignity challenged at least 2 to 5 times a day. If they're a high school student, it's probably 7 to 10 times a day. Somebody is challenging what they look like, what they act like, what they're wearing, who they're hanging out with, who they're dating, who they're not dating, the color of their skin, their sexual orientation. These kids are going after each other in person and online. So when we give devices to our kids, we have to know that we are putting their dignity at risk and that they need to become socially competent in order to stand up for themselves and stand up for others. So on the bottom right here, I have social competence. My goal for your student is if they're at a small elementary, they're transitioning to middle, junior high, high school, that can they walk into a larger population of people and move in and out of different groups of kids, standing up for themselves and standing up for others. If you can do this in like 3rd, 4th grade, 6th, 7th, 8th grade becomes so much easier, as does high school, as does life. Your child is going to have a best friend that one day decides, I don't want to be best friends anymore. Your child is going to be offered a substance in middle school. Your child is going to be asked in high school to do something that they're not ready to do. Your junior high or your high school student is going to receive a nude photo without their permission, like just comes to them. So being socially competent means when I receive this stuff, when somebody asks me to do this, I have the vocabulary to be able to say no, nope, I have dignity and that's going against my worth and I don't want any part of that. And so the more we can practice that with them, the better. And that pops up in this bullying conversation. So when they come to you and say, Chloe was really mean to me today, she said this, instead of calling the teacher, instead of emailing the teacher, the pushback is on your kiddo saying, okay, so I'm Chloe, you're Katey, let's role play what you're gonna try tomorrow. And your kids will be like, that's not gonna work. That is absolutely not gonna work. And it probably won't. It's not gonna be a hallmark moment. Chloe's probably gonna be a jerk the next day too. And that doesn't make Chloe a bully. That makes a dynamic of conflict between your student and Chloe, which is a natural human thing that is inevitable. Your child's going to have conflict. They need to know what to do about it. And the stakes are really, really high. They are really, really high these days. Additionally, media and technology literacy. We hand over these devices and we say, I love you so much. And we don't give them like the driver's ed. We give them the keys to the car and they are crashing and burning. They're making mistakes. People are contacting them. They don't have the skills to be able to defend themselves. We know that adults don't have the brain power to handle the medium sometimes. So we know that we're putting children at risk when we hand over a device and we don't have these ongoing conversations about how are you going to stand up for yourself if somebody says something mean in the video game chat? What if somebody says something mean to you and you don't know what to do? Who can you go to? How do you block, delete, report? And giving them obviously some skills to be able to handle that. On the front of, I gave you a clue. On the front of the word respect. So we use the word respect a lot. When you say respect, what are you after from your student? So you need to be respectful of our home. Be respectful to your sister. What are you actually meaning when you say that? Listen to you, okay? So the tricky thing about respect, especially for this generation, because they have access to social media, because they're so in the know about things that go on, politics, all sorts of, climate change, whatever it is, they just know so much more. They are demanding that they are respected and that their dignity is also upheld. So as a parent, if you have two siblings that are fighting and they walk away from you and feel like you upheld the dignity of their older brother and not of them, they will not respect you. Just like when two kids came to my office, my job under the framework was to figure out who was the aggressor, who was the victim. And then we put the victim over here in the special desk, and we put the, quote, bully over here in the cubicle. And we moved both parties instead of moving them together to face each other and say, what just happened? It's not my conflict. It's not your conflict as a parent, it's your kids. And I want your kids to fight as much as possible. I want them to fight as much as possible. And I know you think I'm crazy, but in the fight, both kids are standing up for their dignity and they're becoming socially competent. Your older kid is probably quick at comebacks. You have to be quick at comebacks in this world. Sometimes it's the younger kid that's actually more savvy that can teach the middle or older kid how to do that back and forth. And so when we talk about the word respect, the Latin root of respect is respectus, is a mutual admiration for another person. So if your children are fighting and you are expecting that they are going to walk away from you with very underdeveloped brains and feel like, whoo, I'm going to be respectful to my brother who just hit me, not going to happen. Same thing at the school level. I'd have two 8th grade boys. They were sent to me because they slammed each other into a locker in the locker room. And I would say something like, okay, guys, I don't expect you to be friends, but I do expect you to be respectful. And they would say, yes, ma'am. And they would walk out, and I had windows in my office, and I would see this one flip the other one off. Because I was asking them to do something. I was forcing an inauthentic apology. I was forcing respect on them. And respect is earned, dignity is given, and dignity is theirs to keep. And so I do want to play just a short clip. This is the author of this platform of dignity and respect and how they walk hand in hand. Her name is Rosalind Wiseman. She wrote the script for the Mean Girls movie, and she also wrote a couple books called Queen Bees and Wannabes and Masterminds and Wingmen.
18 years, since I was 22. On the two concepts that are dear to me, one is about dignity. The dignity is not negotiable. The dignity means that every person is worthwhile, and that when you walk into a school, that your voice is heard and you matter, and that you are visible. The second is that conflict is inevitable, and that probably abuse of power is likely, and that children and all of us need to have social competence to deal with that, but that we must do it with dignity intact of ourselves and others.
And so I just want to repeat what she said. Conflict is inevitable. Abuse of power is likely. Abuse of power by a child that eats your Oreos is likely. Abuse of power by a classmate, by a teacher, by a coach, by an administrator, we are all human. Sometimes we overstep. And so as it relates to social competence, I want your child to have conflict. And so when they have conflict, perhaps start the strategizing and the role-playing. That's part of that emotional blueprint to raise their coping and raise the resiliency of our children. Rosalind's an awesome resource, and I will include her platform in the slides that I send to Carlos so he can send those out to you. Just to kind of wrap up this piece about dignity and respect. So about 85 to 90% of what I dealt with at the school was in the bonding category and the annoying category. So we are mean, rude, and annoying as adults, and so are kids. Drama is a word that sometimes adults use to describe what's going on with kids. I'd ask you to think about that word. Because I'm a girl mom, I hear people, random strangers, will come up to us and say, oh, are you so sad you don't have a boy? And I'm like, no, actually I'm not, because that would be 5 and that would be a lot. But there's like this thing around girls that girls are dramatic and they're full of drama. Boys can be dramatic and have drama too, right? And the word drama means we're watching somebody else's pain. And so if girls and boys continue to hear, I'm tired of your drama, stop being so dramatic, guess who's not going to come to us anymore? Guess who's going to start working around us? Guess who's going to try that vape? Guess who's going to numb out on video games? So I do not like the word drama, and so I have taken it out of my vocabulary. As I look at what bullying is and isn't, this last column, this is when I want your kids going to you and your teachers and coaches and administrators. When it's malicious, when it's humiliating, when it is awful, 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 and relentless, yes, that's when they're going to get an adult. The bonding teasing, kids giving each other a hard time, someone's like, knock it off, and they do. They know the boundary, they know the limit. The annoying behavior, somebody poking your kid with a pencil, that is not bullying. That is totally annoying. Knock it off, stop. If it doesn't stop, yeah, of course, going to get the teacher then. But again, those skills of vocabulary. So not everything is bullying, and kids need to know that, parents need to know that, the administrators would love for you to know that. And it's hard because this has been a framework for a long time. But these kids need skills in order to combat that. As I think about the mistakes that my own children and my students have made, both in person and online, I think it's really important to think about pain. Adults only have two choices with pain. We either transmit it on someone else or we transform it, and so do kids. Kids are too young and don't have life experience enough to transform their pain. They're absolutely going to take it out on another person, their brother, their sister, you, their teacher, their coach, whoever. And so when they get a device, you are going to see them do some really painfully, horribly, fantastically horrible mistakes that they're going to need your help with. And there's always a way out. There's always a way out. We have celebrities that have been canceled completely for things that they've done and said. The whole Will Smith slapping thing. Talked about for months, still being talked about, right? Caught on camera. We sit as families and we watch reality TV shows and we make fun of people. And then we tell our kids, go to school and be kind to others. So kids are going to make mistakes in person and online. They're absolutely going to take their pain out on others, and they need your help. And so one of the things over the years, this is an example of some beautiful girls. I don't know what state they came from, but they were the #1 softball team in America. They flipped off the other team. It went viral. It went international news. If you Google these girls' names, this comes up 150 times. We've got to be talking to our kids about when you have a device, what's on your digital footprint, unfortunately, becomes permanent. We can help you with it, but it becomes permanent. It would cost so much money to get this off of the front page of the USA Today. So this was on their picture. And these girls look like yours and mine. Beautiful kids. I'm sure they're really good kids. They had a moment in time. And so as you're working with families, as you're working with schools, as you're working with your best friend's kids, they're going to do stuff like this. The more profane, the more edgy, the more graphic, the more gross they can be, the more street cred they have. So boys use a lot of memes and a lot of graphic profanity, sometimes even pornographic images. Girls are really verbal and kind of profane and say some things that they don't mean. This is an example of an anonymous hate page. This happens all the time. This is not a school issue. It is not a police issue unless there is a direct threat made to their life. So kids are trying to figure out what to do. So this was a conversation, a hate page made about Hayden. It's called I Hate Hayden. And then, so that happened Saturday. This happened Monday at school. That person that made the page was getting everybody together to talk about her. So she's getting crushed online and she's getting crushed in person. And again, we just hand these phones over and like, good luck, kids. And this is if she told her parents. She told her parents about this situation. Most 8th grade girls probably wouldn't. And so they're desperately trying to figure out, what am I going to do on Monday? And so she texted her mom and said, she's telling all of them, you need to come get me. So yes, a school can help, but if we touch this one, we have to touch the 2,000 that happened over the weekend as well. And so really talking to your kids about when kids are mean to you in person and online. What is your go-to? What are you going to do about that? And those conversations have to be ongoing and pervasive. So I just want to share with you just a short clip from Dr. Brene Brown. She's a researcher out of UT Austin. You probably know of her. She's pretty famous. But this is her take on dignity.
But it really changed me. It's the practice that came from the book. And it is, don't walk through the world looking for evidence that you don't belong, because you will always find it.
Yes.
Don't walk through the world looking for evidence that you're not enough, because you'll always find it. Our worth and our belonging are not negotiated with other people. We carry those inside of our hearts. And so for me, I know who I am. I'm clear about that. And I'm not going to negotiate that with you. I will negotiate a contract with you. I will negotiate maybe even a topic with you, but I'm not going to negotiate who I am with you. Because then, and this is, I think, the heart of the book, then I may fit in for you, but I no longer belong to myself. And that is a betrayal I am not willing to do anymore. I spent the first 30 years of my life doing that. I'm not willing to betray myself anymore to fit in with you. I just can't do it.
I don't.
So the difference between Dr. Brown and your kids is she's like 58 years old. So our kids, mine included, are literally negotiating who they are every day, all day long. And they're trying to figure out how to belong and not just fit in. They're seeking belonging, which is different than fitting in. And so if they know you have dignity, it's yours to keep, this is how you're gonna fight for it, and I'm gonna help you, then when those situations come up, they know what to do. Because those situations, those high stakes things that I named, somebody offering them a substance, somebody taking them on their first date, they're gonna have a jerky college professor. They're probably gonna have a roommate that smokes pot. They're probably gonna date somebody who ends up being kind of jerky. This is a lifelong skill to be able to stand up for yourself and preserve your dignity. And so if you can start now, the resiliency of your child will go way, way up. All right, I have two last sections, and this is really about brains. And so in the spirit of brains, we're gonna actually move our bodies, because every 16 to 20 minutes, we should be moving our bodies when we're learning. So we're gonna do what's called a gallery walk. So I'm gonna ask you just to walk this way around the sanctuary. So I'd like you to talk about two things. One, what age do you think your child's brain is fully developed? And two, with the children that you either have or work with, what is one thing that sets them off? So the first question is, what age do you think their brain is going to fully develop? And number two, what's one thing that sets them off, and what do you do to calm them down? So I'm gonna have everybody, it's called a gallery walk. You're gonna walk together or separately all the way around twice, and then you can have a seat. In Phoenix, yeah. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. 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 Were you out in Mesa? No, in Chandler? CCV in Chandler? I was at Scottsdale Christian too, though. Kind of all over. Yeah. 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 That's so funny. Well, welcome. Yes, yes, high fives, yes. Physical touch, yes. Yeah, of course. All right, once you've done like 1.5 to 2 loops, you can have a seat. Get that brain engaged. So when I'm teaching teachers, my recommendation is every 16 to 20 minutes, especially with like kids 5th through 12th grade, that they have some sort of movement within the classroom every 16 to 20 minutes, because we know that especially with this generation, brains have been rewired by screen time. We're not getting as many recess minutes. We know that our bodies are naturally wired to move, especially for our young males. They are hands-on experiential learners. So brain development, typical brain development. There's 4 billion brains on the earth, right? So I don't know who you're raising, but somewhere between 22 to 24 for our young girls and 28 to 30 for our boys. So if you have a 9-year-old boy, he's not even halfway there. The boys that I used to see in my office were 14. They weren't even halfway there. So they would come in and like, why did you, light the trash can on fire? Like, I don't know, But they're 6 feet tall. They look like they should, quote, know better, right? Good kids make risky, impulsive decisions. So the prefrontal cortex, which is the rational decision-making capability of the brain, does not develop for a really, really long time. And so a lot of our kids are living in the brainstem. So if you take your index finger and you put it behind your neck, where your brain and your neck come together, the only choices that a kid has when they're in the brainstem, and an adult, is I'm gonna fight you, verbally or physically or both, I'm gonna flee you, or I'm gonna freeze. So does anybody have a runner? Like when they're in trouble with you, they walk away or run away? Anybody have a runner? Yeah. There was a boy at the middle school that was a runner, and so I had a golf cart and a walkie-talkie. If you ever been to Scottsdale, Arizona, I was on Shea Boulevard every day. Like he would just get in trouble and he would just run, he would flee. It's a natural response to being in conflict, right? So for kids that live in households that are chaotic, dysfunctional, violence, anything that's going on that is unpredictable, they're gonna go fight, flight, freeze really quickly. They're gonna do that in the classroom, they're gonna do that on the football field, they're gonna do that in a car, they're gonna do that. They're just triggered very easily. So as you were walking around, what's one thing that sort of makes one of your children fly off the handle? Anybody have something that just, their brain goes to what I call crazy town? Anything her brother does. How old is she? She's 7. Okay, anything her brother does, right? So easily triggered by brother. Thinking about when they're in trouble with you, what are some of the responses that you get from them? I don't want to talk about it. I love that. That's perfect. Other responses. I didn't do it. Okay. You're so unfair. Okay. Yeah. So going back to dignity, we have to get super clear about, do we do that, right? Because I have a set of twins. One is, so easy, and the other one is so not. And so they're like, you didn't do that for Ella. I'm like, yeah, because she doesn't do this, right? So I want to show just a short clip. This is the movie Seabiscuit. So I'm old, and so it's not so old, but it is in Spanish. I couldn't find it in English, so it's in Spanish. But what I want you to focus on is the horse and the horse's reaction. So something that you need to know is we are all raising a bunch of like spooked horses. Our kids are really limbic right now. They live in the brainstem. Like, what's going on? What am I reacting to? Who's making fun of me? Who's doing what? They're very limbic. And so then we become very limbic too. And so I call it downstairs brain, upstairs brain. So I just want you to watch Seabiscuit the horse.
È un po' nervoso, padre.
Sì, sì.
No, sul serio.
Tranquillo.
Oh, fermo!
No, no. Quel cavallo è pazzo.
Ci voleva solo.
So as you can see, nothing good is going on by restraining Seabiscuit. So what would be a comparison at home of that? Hopefully we're not restraining our kids. Making them sit in the seat as you talk to them. So when that brain goes down to the brainstem, I'm going to fight you, I'm going to flee you, or I'm going to freeze. So often at the school level, boys specifically would look down, they'd look away, they'd look anywhere but in my eyes. So what did you think I did next? Look at me when I'm talking to you, and then I would pepper them with like 15 more questions. What happened? Who was there? What did you do? And they'd be like, right? So that should have been my clue that this brain is not ready for this conversation. So when you're getting cues like, I'm not ready to talk to you, you're not getting a lot of words out of them, that is your cue to not do this. That is your cue that your spooked horse needs some time to calm down. So a couple strategies to think about. Moving his or her body. Have them take a lap around the house, run the stairs, walk around the backyard, go throw something. Give them at least 15 to 20 minutes to calm down. You will get the entire story, you will get what you want across, and your relationship will remain intact. Another great strategy, drinking water. Water will immediately calm down a brain. When they're not answering you and you're peppering them with questions, guess who is also in the downstairs brain? You are. And so we're depleting the relationship and we're not getting anywhere. Too many words will overwhelm their brain. And you're driving cortisol up into the brain and it's coding the verbal emotive centers. So boys specifically at school, I feel so deeply for because they're so wildly misunderstood when they go quiet. And when they go quiet, they often are told by adults, like, well, if you can't tell me what happened, then you're in double trouble because you're defying authority. That is absolutely not true. That brain is not ready to have that conversation. So moving the body, drinking water will get you everything you need. Put them in the car. Take them on an errand. Take them to go get ice cream. Their verbal emotive centers will open up. I don't have boys, but those of you that do, my boy mom friends are like, oh yeah. In the car, he's like, or when the lights go off at night and I'm super tired, all of a sudden he wants to tell me his whole life story. So those are the moments that we've got to push through because that is where the gold lies. So downstairs brain, these are the things that spook horses. Too many words, being too close to them when you're angry with them, not giving them time and space to calm down. Anything that threatens their ego. So especially in coaching, especially in teaching, when teachers are walking down the hall and they say something in front of a group of peers and humiliate a kid, in a classroom setting, like, Aiden, I'll wait for you. That is going to put a brain into the downstairs brain, right? So this is training, and this is just, what we do as humans when we interact with each other. On the front of screen time, so video game industry, social media industry, 150% does not care about you, your family, or your children. And so brains are being overwhelmed by screen time, by social media, by video games. And so when I talk to parents about screen time, I put it into 2 buckets: digital vegetables, digital candy. So this is a brain scan of a kid doing homework. Highly engaged, blood flow's good, we're doing good. Downstairs, down here, you have digital candy. Social media, this is probably a kid on a video game, 3-4 hours. Body hasn't moved, blood flow's shrinking. We're not really doing something that's moving our life forward. They would argue that they're saving the world, but the content that they're consuming is what you're looking at. Not all YouTube is awful. Not all screen time is awful. Something happened with our dryer, we used YouTube to fix it. Like, not everything on there is awful, and our kids are using YouTube and other platforms to do really cool things. And the reality is, these are digital leaders. They are 20,000 miles ahead of you. Don't try to keep up with them. Try to understand, what are you consuming and what is it about, and is it moving your life forward? And if it's not, we have to have a balance between digital candy and digital vegetables. The stuff that the school is sending home, most of that is digital vegetables. The stuff the kids really love, most of that is digital candy. And so we just have to have a balance. So not all screen time is awful. I would say for young kids, I wouldn't give them any more than 30 minutes of screen time that's digital candy. If they're FaceTiming grandma, amazing. That's mirroring, that's great. Older kids, the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends no more than 2 hours per day. And if we were really honest, I would say our digital candy is probably more than 2 hours a day. And so monkey see, monkey do. As a family, we gotta figure that out too. Video games, how many of you have gamers? Okay, how many of you are like, why do they love this so much? So why do they love this so much? And those of you that have gamed or game now, like, why do you love this so much? Because the video game industry has gotten this right. It is dopamine, okay? Safe place to fail. Awesome. Safe place to fail. Connect with friends from all over. So most of our classrooms are still pretty standard. Not a lot of movement, can't be really loud. If I move my body, sometimes I get in trouble. So when I sit in the back of middle and high school classrooms, even elementary, the redirect from boys to girls is about 6-to-1. When boys start rocking their chairs, when they're tapping their pencils, when they blurt out, teachers will redirect them 6-to-1 over a girl. So this world welcomes boys with open arms. I can be loud, I can talk to my friends, I can be competitive, I can collaborate, I can be strategic, and I can fail. In 8th grade language arts, if I fail something, sometimes I don't get a do-over. In this world, I get like 100 do-overs. And so this is a place that is very, very attractive to them. So I'm just gonna show you about 10 seconds of Fortnite. So Fortnite was like really popular, then it faded, it's making a comeback. But I want you to watch how fast the scene changes and what's going on in the scene. So it's not just that it's colorful and animated and there's a gun involved, it's that there is strategy, competition, and collaboration behind that. So when I'm talking to teachers, I mean, our teachers, you need to like go buy them cupcakes tomorrow. They are up against Netflix, Call of Duty, Among Us, social media. Like, they have to like stand on their head to teach. Like, these kids are watching this stuff and then coming to school and like, this is so boring, this is so boring. So I'd like you just to watch, I want you to count to 10 on how fast the scene changes.
Come on. All right, we only need to defend for 2 more minutes. We should be all right here. This is weird. Like, is
So
it
that
getting
was
attacked?
about 10 seconds. So imagine playing that for like 3-4 hours and what is happening with the brain, right? So boys will tell me like, well, I'm talking, I'm yelling, so I'm like using my verbal emotive skills. I'm like, that's great, you are connecting. The headsets are purposeful. The industry does not want parents to know what's going on. So if you are going to allow them, get on it once in a while. Play with your kids. Understand what's going on. The chat boxes in here, full of yuck. I mean, even with the best of kids, again, the grosser and more graphic I am, the better I am in the social hierarchy. And so just some side notes on that as well. All right, lastly, social media. How many of you have a relative that's like, today I tied my shoe, and then like 2 hours later, I ate soup at Panera, and then tonight I'm going to this movie, right? So this is not just a kid thing. We have 3 basic needs as humans. I want to be seen, I want to be heard, and I want to be loved. Those are 3 basic needs, and they're met very, very, very easily. But when they're not met, our children will find someone or something or a substance to meet them. And so a lot of people are like, why is my kid addicted to the phone? It may not be the device or the phone. It may be that the attachment needs are being met. And so when we look at what kids are after, they want to know, I'm okay, my family's okay, and the world's okay. It's hard to prove that to kids right now, especially if they're watching news, they hear you talking, they're listening to the radio, whatever it is hard to prove to kids that we are okay. And so additional messages, nurturance, spending time together obviously is needed. And so I want to just end this section, and then I'll give you some resources on what it looks like when we're on our phones, what it looks like when attachment needs are not being met. Every single child is signaling to us, I need you to see me, I need you to hear me, and I need you to love me. And I think all of us are probably like, I do that. But when we are head down in our phone or our laptop or both, because that's where our financial livelihood lies for most of us, we are not seeing, hearing, and loving our kids. And so I want to just show you this still face experiment. So the professor is going to ask the mom to play with her baby, and then she's going to ask her to outright ignore her baby. And so I want you to watch what the baby does next.
Babies this young are extremely responsive to the emotions and the reactivity and the social interaction that they get from the world around them. This is something that we started studying 30, 40 years ago, when people didn't think that infants could engage in social interaction. In the still face experiment, what the mother did was she sits down and she's playing with her baby, who's about a year of age.
I'm my good girl. Oh.
And she gives a greeting to the baby gives a greeting back to her.
Yeah.
This baby starts pointing at different places in the world, and the mother's trying to engage her and play with her. They're working to coordinate their emotions and their intentions, what they want to do in the world. And that's really what the baby is used to. And then we ask the mother to not respond to the baby. The baby very quickly picks up on this. And then she uses all of her abilities to try and get the mother back. She smiles at the mother. She points because she's used to the mother looking where she points. The baby puts both hands up in front of her and says, "What's happening here?" She makes that screechy sound at the mother, like, come on, why aren't we doing this? Even in this 2 minutes, when they don't get the normal reaction, they react with negative emotions, they turn away, they feel the stress of it, they actually may lose control of their posture because of the stress that they're experiencing.
Okay. I'm here. And what are you doing? Oh, yes. Oh, what a big girl.
It's a little like the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good is that normal stuff that goes on, that we all do with our kids. The bad is when something bad happens, but but the infant can overcome it. After all, when you stop the still face, the mother and the baby start to play again. The ugly is when you don't give the child any chance to get back to the good. There's no reparation, and they're stuck in that really ugly situation.
That was fun to watch, huh? So I just want to point out like how quickly the baby came back online. And so that's our goal, is when you're frustrated with them, it's fine. Like, go take a time out. I'm going to go take a time out. But make sure you come back to do that restoration. And especially at the school level too, it is not an unreasonable request for you as parents to say, so he was suspended, or he made a mistake, or he did something in class. Like, how are we going to restore him? Because with children that are intense, with children that scream and blurt or move, which is normal human behavior, sometimes they're put in the special desk, right? Or sometimes they're sent to the front office. And the only takeaway message that that child can get from that is, my energy is not welcome here. And so after a few times of that, yeah, I'm going to scream. I'm going to do some things to get your attention. So we would call it attention-seeking behavior. I'm going to call it attachment. I need to be seen. I need to be heard. I need to be loved. And so if I can't get it from you and I can't get it at school, I can 100% get it on TikTok, Instagram, anywhere online. I will find someone or something to provide that with my attention. And so I would say that about predation. I would say that about sexting. I would say that about school shootings. The boys in this country that have decided to perpetrate violence against schools, towns, cities, parades, were desperate for someone to see, hear, and love them. Desperate. And decided the only way to do that was this horrible thing. And so, again, really easy to attune to somebody, bring them back with you and say, that didn't go so well for us. Let's go for a ride and restore your kiddo. When we're on our phones, putting them down. What's up? I got to send an email. I'll be with you in 15 minutes. Meet me at the kitchen table. Like, whatever we need to do, they absolutely need us to be face-to-face present with them at all times, if possible. So lastly, just some resources. I talked about mental health. I talked about help seeking. If I could wave like one magic wand, it would be get devices out of the bedrooms. Your devices, laptops, iPads, video game consoles, get them out of the bedrooms. Not tonight. So you have to promise me. So what's today? September 14th? Okay, so I really mean this. I want you to take until at least November 1st to think about anything to do with devices and if you want to make any changes after what you heard tonight. Our kids need 8 to 12 hours of sleep. Most high school kids, most junior high kids are getting about 4 to 6 hours between homework and then dinner, activities, athletics, church, etc. They're not getting enough sleep. And so sleep is absolutely essential. Additionally, as I think about school safety and community safety, as I said, this summer, for a long time, we've had a lot of things happen, but especially this summer, this kept coming up that our kids are our first responders. Our kids know at least 2 months before something bad's gonna happen, they know about it, but they don't know what to do about it. And so we have to have the conversation with our kids that if you see a safety issue going on, if someone is posting about guns, if somebody is saying they want to end their life, if somebody is saying something that makes your stomach turn, who can you go to? If it's not me as your parent, who can you go to at school? Does your school district have an anonymous tip line? So this middle rung here, ideation and leakage, these students and young adults that have perpetrated violence, they always tell someone what they're gonna do. They pretty much tell the whole world on YouTube and social media. And kids have said to me, well, I don't want to sell them out. I don't want to sell out his friendship. I don't know who to tell. Snitches still get stitches. So school people would say, and we do this, like TSA says, if you see something, say something. That does not line up with kid brain. It is still not cool to snitch. And so we've got to make it cool to come to us about safety issues if we want this to stop, because all of the clues are there. Everything you want to know is on your kid's device. And so we've got to be brave to be checking them. Additionally, and this is one of the reasons I left the school, we had a student, number 2 runner in the state of Arizona, started tweeting out that he was in distress. And so I want to show you what it looks like and what you're looking for as your student ages into middle school, high school. We are seeing these signs of distress in 5 to 11-year-olds. We've seen a triple jump during the pandemic in signs of distress. And so you'll see in the blue, you've got some pretty typical boy stuff going on, funny, sports, blah, blah, blah. But in the red, he's clearly calling for help. And you have other students that are liking it, retweeting it, but not coming forward and telling adults. He was 18, great kid, wonderful kid, hundreds of friends, full ride scholarship for running. And so this is what you're looking for as you're checking devices and supervising, is that it's not always outright. And with boys, it's going to be really cryptic. With girls, they're going to tell the whole world. And that's why we intervene with girls much more than we do with boys, because boys typically don't say a whole lot, don't say it directly, but they tell a story. And they use social media and gaming platforms to do that. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. Lastly, what is out there? There are whole communities on social media that are welcoming our kids in. This is, just a couple examples of communities that exist on Instagram where people can join, and there's 400 comments below it. And so as you hand this stuff over, you have to know it backwards and forwards. If you're giving Snapchat, Instagram, TikTok, whatever, Minecraft, Roblox, whatever you're giving, you have to know it backward and forward. It's just too much to expose our kids to that. So as I end up going back to dignity, I believe that if we're handing these things over, that your child deserves dignity in the use of their device. So we hand it over, Merry Christmas, I love you, you hit your brother, give me your phone. I'm so tired tonight, you can have it back. You didn't clean your room, give me your phone. And we're all doing this massive game of tug of war, and we're losing, and the kids are winning, and we are tired, and they are not. And so when kids do typical things, like they didn't make their bed, they didn't do their chores, they swore, they are failing math, sure, take the device, but what are you replacing it with? Taking the device might get you a good math grade for a week, but what a failure in math is indicating is, I don't have the math skills. So sit down with them and build their math skills. They didn't clean their room, take the phone. We're gonna clean your room together. I'm gonna show you how to organize. So we're using these devices as pawns in our parenting game, and we're losing. And pretty soon they start working around us and doing things that we don't know about. And so we've got to get these devices out of the middle of our relationship. It's ruining us. It's ruining them. It's ruining us. And so having a family screen time contract, sitting down and saying, what do you think is fair? These are mom and dad's 5 non-negotiables. We don't share body parts. We don't share address. You don't wear your school logo in your photo. Whatever it is, you come up with those non-negotiables. You put golden guardrails around your family. Additionally, if you don't know what a router is, you need to find out what a router is. Your router does a lot of the work for you. It can shut down your Wi-Fi at night. It can give your 17-year-old more control than your 8-year-old. It can tell you how many phones you have on your network. It is not unlikely for your child to have more than one device that you don't know about. So when parents take devices away, I go to Chloe and get her old iPhone 8, and I'm using that in your house because all I need is Wi-Fi. And so your router also filters out explicit content. So the average age of porn exposure is 8. And so we want to make sure that your router is filtering out and blocking web searches that are normal. 10-year-old boys are going to Google boobs, and a lot of boobs are going to come up unless you have settings really locked down. I get calls every week, like, my 9-year-old stumbled on porn. I'm like, well, did he stumble on it, or did you just not have your settings locked down? And so, yes, it's tedious. Yes, it takes time, but we got to do it. So I just want to thank you so much for having me here tonight. I'm so honored to be with you. I get to come back November 16th. I think we have some questions on Slido, maybe, 1 or 2.
Yeah, what we're going to do, because a lot of you have kids who are in the room right now, and you might need to get to them. We're given some great questions about age, what apps are appropriate, questions sort of about the proliferation of mental health issues within our kids. And so what I'd like to do, because there are a few questions that came in, not that many, is if you want to hang around and talk to Katey, you can. And then we'll send out to everyone who registered a kind of a Q&A answer sheet for you, as well as some of the tools and resources. But we want to make sure we get you out of here in a timely manner. So Katey's going to hang around for a minute for you if you'd like to come chat with her. All I ask is that you take a minute or two, not like 15 or 20 or an hour, but you take a minute or two, knowing some other folks may want to chat with her, and then we'll be back in October with another parent education seminar. Can we thank Katey?
Yeah, thank you so much
for her time.
Thanks for having me. Thanks. And I will, I'll send these slides to you, so if you have their
we'll send you
emails.
the slide deck. We'll send you some written answers to the Q&A, but she is around to answer some questions and interact with you right now. So if you submitted one of the questions, come on up real quick. I think it's timely, it's appropriate, it's important. And thank you for being here tonight. The folks watching your kids are still with them, and so you don't have to run there. There's a few minutes, but I know some of you need to get out of here. So.
Hi.
Nothing can take my hallelujah. Nothing can take my hallelujah. Shadows will fade, darkness will break. I'll keep on singing your praise. Oh, nothing can take my hallelujah. Nothing can take my hallelujah. Shadows will fade, darkness will break. I'll keep on singing your praise. Nothing can take my hallelujah. Nothing can take my hallelujah. Shadows will fade, darkness will break. I'll keep on singing your praise. Oh, what can take away hallelujah? No darkness can contain my hallelujah. Your cross has made the way for my hallelujah.
that you